¿Quién iba a imaginar que el camino que un día iniciaste finalizaría abruptamente? ¿Quién iba a pensar que la salida a tu encrucijada sería cruzar el puente que jamás pensaste que podrías cruzar? La transformación solo ocurre en lugares incómodos, así que con valentía sigue caminando un pie enfrente del otro. Acuérdate que si no creces, te encoges. Yo soy MartaRo, bienvenido de vuelta a la incomodidad. Échale. Muy bienvenidos sean al poder de lo incómodo, tercer episodio con Krista Petty, mi mentora. ¿Están listos? Vamos a hablar de mentoría, mindset, coaching, etc, etc. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Can you do this? Third episode. Is your body, mind, and soul ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. So
always. At the end, we say goodbye.
At the end, we say goodbye. Exactly. We didn't.
I know that
last
part.
One. So we are coaches.
Yes.
Yes.
Currently,
and that's why
actively coaching.
Actively coaching, and that's why we know each other. That's the initial relationship, right?
Was that the initial relationship?
I mean, I was being brought up
Yes.
as a coach.
Okay.
No?
Yeah.
And then soon after that, you started mentoring, which then the relationship was mentor. But I think at the end of the day, our coaching is a lot of what my mentoring is about, obviously in my life, etc. I've recently started mentoring. You know that too.
Yes.
My mentor journey.
How's that going?
It has its moments.
Isn't that fantastic? I always love when people start to mentor after I've mentored them. They have a deeper appreciation for mentoring.
Yeah.
How that is.
It is definitely a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just beginning that journey. And it's been definitely different for me to coach coaches. It's totally different than just coaching.
Mm-hmm.
There's some aspects that are similar, but very little of it is. And I guess this episode, I was trying to give it like a powerful title of what we could leave here for people that are wanting to become a coach or wanting to work with people, of what you think are your truthiest truths, even though we don't like truthy truths, but you know.
Truthy, toothy truths.
What do you think would be your, what you know for sure, not just about mentoring, but coaching, like your own journey, like mine, obviously has had different phases of it. I definitely think I don't think I'm the coach I was in the beginning. And I don't say that in the bad way. I just say like you mature in different aspects of my journey has become more spiritual. Like there's a part of me where I've been definitely leaning more towards spiritual coaching than the harder results-based coaching. But that initial, way of creating and moving human being is still there. I think it will always be a part of it. I believe in the pillars of it.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, does it feel like that transition from phase to phase in your own coaching career? Is it clear of those transitions, or does it feel just kind of like a long journey where you've integrated different tools?
I'm going to answer it this way because it's what the visual I have in my head. So I'm going to go with the pictures that come. And at this point, my coaching is highly intuitive. And so it's when I listen and pay attention deeply. And then as I'm listening the client, I'm allowing more of an intuitive aspect of me to tune into the intuitive aspect of me. And that has been developed over time. But in this conversation, because I'm having an intuitive hit that's visual right now, I'm going to use it. and it feels like it could perhaps paint a picture or give a visual on, I think it'll address your question. When I'm coaching clients, there are particular framework pieces that I use that are consistent for every client that support me in being with them over time so that we can kind of track and connect and grow together over time. So when I'm with a client, I tend to talk about two axes or two planes that we'll work together in. And one is the horizontal, which is achievement, more results and achievement in that way. And then the other is more the vertical plane, which is fulfillment, right? And so fulfillment being the more vertical, people can identify that as more of the fulfillment, satisfaction, spiritual, knowing who I am, the intangibles, but deeply felt.
Yeah.
Right?
Purpose.
Yeah, purposes, and that there's an expansion and a growth and a progress there. That they're feeling, experiencing, and noticing difference, growth over time in the vertical. And they're often intangibles, but deeply felt, right? These are more the formless. These are more the kind of who am I, ways of being, energetic being, frequency, vibration, pace, those kinds of things. Yeah, all those kinds of things that we talk about, but how is that actually experienced within their system, and how is that felt in expansion and growth? And then there is the horizontal, which is those tangible. Like I say, rocks are hard, water's wet. The why, what, by, when, specific, tangible, measurable. We can track it, we can see it, we can point to it, right? Which is also valuable and important. What I coach to are the intersections. Sometimes I'm working with a client and we're looking for an increase in the fulfillment in the accomplishment.
Right.
And sometimes I'm working with clients and they're looking for more of the tangible accomplishment within this kind of vertical spiritual practice of sorts, right? And so depending on where the client comes into this relationship and a coaching practice with me, we're kind of exploring those two and see where they are on that, because we want both and. Why I'm looking for the intersection points, because it will shift the trajectory between those two over time. That if their life now becomes those two coming together to create the trajectory of their life over time. Because even just a percentage of growth and shift and change in either of those over time creates quite a difference in the experience of life and living life and being coached. So that's one. I use that framework for all of my clients. And so, depending on where the client is. Now that right there is primary for me, right? The other framework I use is center of gravity. The center of gravity lives in the client. Center of gravity of my coaching, my questions, my inquiries, the answers, the directionality. I can offer suggestions, but ultimately where we're going, what we're designing, what we're creating, and therefore what we will create as results as a result of that center of gravity all lives in the client. And so I can tell you all kinds of different ways that I do that, but that's a primary fundamental piece that is often talked about, but I think it takes real talent and skill to keep the center of gravity with the client and allow them to be the author, generator, designer, and creator of the life that they choose. So I'm not sure if that exactly answered your question, but those two things combined allow me to be with them and meet them in my coaching, gives me a lot of room to move around with them, allows for more of a spatial kind of co-creation in it, with the center of gravity staying there and us working in those two axes. Anything I do in addition to that is hung on those two things. Yeah. There are a few other things that I keep as fundamentals, but everything else pretty much hangs on those two pieces.
Do you remember when it was more about like intuitive coaching and not so much result-based coaching? Because we weren't necessarily coached into.
Yeah, I know very few coaching schools or coaches trainings that spend a good amount of time on developing your intuition and or listening your instincts and developing intuition in your coaching practice. When I developed my own coaches training, that was a fairly large portion of it that started from the beginning and that we tracked over time as the coaches practiced and learned and grew. One of the pieces in the rubric of assessment was around their intuition and how much of that intuition was starting to come online and be available and used and integrated into their coaching practice, because I felt it was one of the most valuable pieces as coach as instrument. So if I'm an instrument being used as an instrument for coaching and support, then I need to tune this instrument, and I want to keep this instrument tuned. Right. And one of the ways that we would tune that, we called it self as instrument, is daily practices that the coach is doing to include tuning and connecting to your intuition, and ways to create an open space inside of you as instrument to best serve your coaching clients. For me, I think it was always there, and the way I lived my life, it was pretty present. And so when I got into coaching, I got into individual one-on-one coaching after I'd had a pretty strong immersion in training. And so I did coach one-on-many for a lot of years, one-on-many.
Sorry. I also want to hit on that because we don't really, in Latin America, we don't really see the difference of training and coaching. And it is very different.
It's very different. So one of the difference between training and coaching is training in my practice and understanding and my journey is training is one-on-many, and not just group coaching, but large group coaching, right? Typically for me, over 25 to 30 people. Right? Where a lot of the small group coaching or group coaching is, can be useful, but it also becomes limiting for larger group. And so we move into more of facilitation and then also moving into training. And I can go on and on about the difference between facilitation and training. So the way I hold it is coaching one-on-one, group coaching, right? Each of these learning kind of a different way, what's distinct and what's the same, but one-on-one coaching, group coaching, facilitation, and then trainer or training.
Which one do you not prefer, but do you love them all the same?
No. I'm a training.
Big mass.
Yeah. I like large groups where I'm training, which in that training practice, I'm using the others. Sometimes I'm facilitating a particular thing. Sometimes I'm doing one-on-one coaching, and sometimes I'm doing small group coaching, but it's all within this larger group training experience.
Yeah.
So that's why I like that, because then there's diversity in what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we're navigating and working with people.
And I also love a piece that I love about that training is that it's the pillars and the context we create. It's just really awesome to see how you can move people from point A to point B with their own experience of that context. But part of what I think is exciting is that I really believe, and maybe because this was my personal experience as a participant, but I had done one-on-one, and I think that for many people that's awesome. But when I was in a training room and I heard everyone's story and I saw everyone in their own whatever things, breakdowns, possibility, it made me open up, because it made me be like, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I think it's extremely valuable. And even in one-on-one coaching, when I mentor coaches or I coach coaches, we also talk about meeting your clients and learning about how your clients learn. How do they most effectively learn? because they may be in a one-on-one experience with you, but where they learn most effectively and rapidly is in group, like small group or larger group, because that group interaction is very supportive for their learning process. And so you can absolutely create learning in a one-on-one, but if you can come to know that about them, then you can encourage them maybe to also include group experiences within the journey. And so that's supporting, and then you can reflect on that in your coaching one-on-one. What are they learning in the group processes? What are they exploring and learning about themselves in that can then come into your one-on-one coaching process? Or vice versa. Maybe one-on-one is really effective for them. And they've been doing mostly group. And now they go, wow, this one-on-one when it's just me is even more effective for me. I'm not distracted. I don't hide out. I don't become invisible. I don't slide into the background because it might be uncomfortable for me to be the only one here. But I also need to have the attention on me and only me in order to deepen into that or to grow in that.
Some people are also very good with accountability partners. Some people don't love it as much. Right?
And I think it's just another way. Like any tool we use is finding out first center of gravity with your client, what's most effective for them. And we don't think about that a lot of times as coaches because we're not coached to that, right? I say you get your coaches training and then you need to get in and start coaching people and be mentored to the nuances, to the unseens, to the really fleshing out and growing as a coach. And so I always encourage that, and not just your standard coaches training with mentor coaching hours to get the certification. Like the real training happens when you've got your certification and you get out there and you start building your own business and you're growing your own clients. Because, oh, by the way, a lot of coaching training programs don't even talk about how to build your business effectively.
I do that with my mentees. Not all of them, but the ones that did finish the program and then staffed for a while and then, right? And right now I'm at that point with 5 of them where they're trying to build their business and it's more different fears that come up.
It is.
Yeah. It's so different, the business side of it than
It is.
Yeah, than the coaching side of it.
Yeah, but there are 2 wings to that. Like you can be an excellent coach, but if you don't know how to build your business, it's not going to take flight. Or you can be excellent in business and not be great at coaching. So how do we have 2 wings so it can take flight?
Totally. One thing that was definitely a struggle and probably is still sometimes is that I have this belief, how I was brought up was being an interpreter. And that gave me so much in my face
First-hand
experience.
On the job training.
Yeah. And like
without being the only one leading the whole thing.
Which is amazing. But like for me, I think my training was more visual than intuitive because I was just like, oh, I see what he's doing, or I see because I was right behind you guys as you were coaching, and it was just so much repetition of patterns of body. So it's been a challenge to recreate that in any way. I tried to, now that I'm doing in person, to bring them to staff because I do believe that that's where it's at. Like just being confronted with people like all the time, just being in front of people, more than the theory of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say I'm not a coach's mentor. They're just listening to this podcast. They don't have the possibility of being in an in-person training all the time. What is a way they can practice, right? In person, or just like kind of practicing the tools, maybe not with a client, but like in their day-to-day, or how can they build this observation or...
Yeah. Well, one of the things, such great questions. One of the things I will say that I'm just going to use this right now is what you just shared with me is what I listened is if I'm working with you, what I think I just listened, if I can listen it back and you can tell me if this resonates or is true for you, is you're a visual learner. Like visually, it's important for you to see it. And as you can see it, you can watch it and see, oh, I see what they're doing. I see the patterning. I see that, and high repetition. And so seeing something with high repetition. So visual and high repetition experiential seem to be, now it may have just been the form in which it was being delivered, right?
Yeah.
But those are the two things you took to, and now you're reflecting on, wow, I watched it. That was super valuable for me. And then there was high repetition that was super valuable. You were immersed in it, was high repetition.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were somebody I was mentoring, I would say, where can we replicate the high visual, seeing it, and or also the high repetition, experiencing it. So we would look at, how do we build that out for you as a mentee?
Yeah.
How would we build that out? Others, it might be more auditory. When they can listen it, right? And so if it was listening, we would look for ways for you to do that. But then if I was listening to you and you're like, it was me listening what they were saying, and then listening at high reps, listening, speaking it, then we would build out a practice for you to develop that, right? So I'll give you examples, as silly as these sound, but they work.
Okay.
One is, if you're auditory, you listen yourself. Voice memo. You literally record yourself in session or exploration, your curiosity, your way of being, your lines of questioning, your responses, right? So you would listen to someone that you want to listen to. Let's say they listen to you as a mentor. They listen to a recording, or they watch a recording of you and they listen that. They then take that and then they themselves say the same thing or say parts of that. They record themselves saying it, and then they listen themselves back and they ask themselves, do you believe you? Are you building trust? Do you feel like you as a coach in your questioning and lining a question, when you're listening it, you're included in it. You want to lean into it. You find yourself wanting to answer the question. Like, you literally are practicing those kinds of things. The other thing I used to say is, you want to practice? Cool. Put the teacups up, put the teddy bears up, put the something up, and then you practice it with them. The other thing is, ask if you can practice with people. Can I practice with you? Can we take 30 minutes a week, and over the next 5 weeks, can I just practice with you and work out the kinks and see how it is? And you give me feedback. Was it effective? And when you go to pick the people you're going to practice with, pick diverse, different people. Don't pick all the same people. Pick diverse people, right?
And people that don't know you.
And people, some know you, some don't, if that works, right? Yeah. And then have particular things that you want to practice, right? Is it your initial tee up? Your intake? Do you want to practice your intake? Do you want to practice going through the intake process and take people through that so that you feel like you can get high reps on that and feel really good about the intake process? Make corrections on the intake process. See if you have enough framework or structure. Do you have time to answer their questions, or are you just ramming information down their throat? Right? Those kinds of things. Do you want to practice a particular session? Let's practice a session 6 weeks in. Let's practice a session where it's 6 weeks in and they said, what by when? And they said it on week 2 and they still haven't created it. And now this is like week 6 and they still haven't created the result. How would you be with that client in a coaching session if they're not following through on what they declared? They're not creating the result. How would you be with them in that? Think of scenarios that maybe scare you a little, or you get uncomfortable with, or you were challenged by. Let's run some of those. Oh, and by the way, I want you to go out and, enroll people into you as a coach. So like that whole practice too.
Oh, I'm doing that right now and they're freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is, how do I actually go out there and enroll people into the value of coaching? And enroll them into the value of you as a coach, right? Which means we get to go through all those things like, how do we define coaching? And we're kind of a statement around that now. We get to actually be the embodiment and the example of how we define it and the value of it. Yeah. Establishing the value of it. And then establishing the value for that individual or for people in general. All those practices, right? So if you're visual, you also want things up in front of you. Like if it's supportive in your coaching call, put, if you're doing Zoom, put some sticky notes up where you have questions or you're reminding yourself, smile, or you're reminding yourself, ask questions, stay in the question.
Mm-hmm.
There are some standard things, patterns that show up in coaching in almost all coaches that I've ever mentored or coached.
What would you say are like the top 3 that you see?
Tell versus ask.
Tell versus ask,
Yeah,
like driving
it.
it.
They tell, they give the answers, they drive the conversation, right? They talk more than they listen. So if I said, who did most of the talking? Give me a percentage.
Yeah.
Tell versus ask. They correct before they connect. So connect versus correct, meaning that's the other one. And these are just my standards, right? We're going to work on ask versus tell. We're going to work on connect versus connect over correct, right? And the last thing is you're going to listen beyond what you want, meaning you're going to listen and you're going to want to say something or ask another question. I want you to listen a little longer. I want you to listen a little longer. And then I want you to imagine that they're going to answer your question you want to ask before you ask it. I want you to imagine them answering it before you ask it. And then we talk about that just as a sense of like believing in them, that they have the answers. The center of gravity lives in them.
Yeah.
Right? And let them fumble through, be uncomfortable, be unawkward, because we tend to jump into rescue. We tend to jump in and bring them out of the discomfort too soon.
Yeah. I think the biggest one I see is this idea that the result of the session has to be happy, or, like they need to leave satisfied.
I find it's just value. I feel like like you're driving. If you don't think there's been value created, you start driving value as a coach. No,
and if they don't leave, like I think they should leave, then I feel like I didn't do my job.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them leaving and both of you are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're going to leave this and that's one of the things about mentoring is like, so if you're uncomfortable leaving a session undone, right? Here's another thing I say often is your transition coming out of the session, that needs to be locked and loaded. And that transition needs to sound something like, given the time, as we bring this in for a landing, let's start to talk about what you're taking from this session and integrating and practicing in the coming week or coming 2 weeks, depending on how much time is between, right? Which means the processing or the experience may not be complete. Mm-hmm. They might still be kind of opened up and or frustrated and or raw, but you're going to give it to them to reflect back on the session. You're going to give it to them to see the value in the session.
Yeah.
Because that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
Your responsibility is not to drive or determine value for your client.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's their responsibility.
Yeah. And this idea that we're being paid to, this is one that we talk about a lot. Like we're not paid to speak. We're paid to coach.
Correct.
And sometimes that means I'm not speaking for 20 minutes. That's happened.
Or even
or
almost
longer.
The entire time. And then I say, so given this session.
Exactly.
And the time, it could be that.
Yeah. And that piece, just for the people who might be listening to this and don't want to become coaches, it's about I am who I need to be more than what I need to say. I'm just here to be present to what you're bringing to the session or what we're working on, but I'm not here to even sometimes ask questions like if your beingness isn't here to be very in tune to my client's beingness also.
For sure. One of the things too that I do in the beginning, I make things really explicit in the beginning too. Like I make an agreement with them and they come to trust me that only when things feel like they might be off track or maybe you're reinforcing a pattern that you're here to interrupt, will I interrupt or ask a redirecting question?
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I'm not interrupting or redirecting, then we're on track and you're continuing to move in a way and find your way through whatever it is that you're bringing to the session.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be with you in that and listen that and allow you to coach yourself in whatever way you do. So I do make that agreement so they know. So if I'm not asking a question or I'm not redirecting, right? Or you don't ask specifically, this is a specific piece I would like coaching to, and I don't even know what to be asking myself. Well, that's a client who comes to a session going, this is what's been going on. I want specific coaching to this because I don't even know what questions to ask myself in those moments. Great. But most clients don't come to sessions like that unless you start to kind of curate that with them. Most, who knows what they're going to bring? You don't know what just happened 2 minutes before the session. Right?
What would you say about the initial, I'm out in the world, I want to coach people, and I feel that there's things in my own life that aren't up to where I think they should be. You know, that conversation of I need to be perfect or for me to be able to coach someone else.
If you're coaching, have a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I have a coach and I've been coaching for 30 some years.
And they do, but that still comes up.
What does?
I'm separated, so it's hard for me right now to feel like I have something to give. These are people that have got certified 6 months ago. So it's very fresh for them.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's going to be really uncomfortable, but because this is the journey.
Yeah.
Bring your life to your coaching. Bring your life to your coaching. And provide reflection and transition so that you can take what's going on in your life. You provide yourself a mechanism or a practice that allows you to reflect and transition it so that you can bring some of the wisdom or compassion or empathy or passion or connection or forgiveness or whatever those ways of being that are coming alive in you because of what's going on in your life, right? You can bring those to your session. And to be willing to be able to say, bring your life. And it can sound something like you don't make it about your life, but you can be real and connected. So in the connect versus correct, it would be my clients talking about the possibility of leaving their spouse or partner. That I can say, having been through that myself, I can sense that this is difficult for you and I have great empathy and compassion for you right now.
Or even if my client is maybe letting go of something that has nothing to do what I'm going through, to connect to the piece, the empathy, like to use it to inform,
letting
like
go,
I'm here.
Loss.
Letting go,
fear,
loss, exactly.
Grief, any of those things. But you can also say, given some of the things that I've experienced in my own life, I certainly have been in my own experience of that. And they may say, what are some of the things you learned? It's okay for me to say, some of the things I learned is this, and this. Does any of that, and then bring it back. Does any of that resonate with you or feel like it might be valuable for you in your journey? Part of that, though, is I really do encourage them to take what's going on in their life and reflect on it so they can bring the reflection to the coaching, not the content of the experience. Bring the reflection.
I love that.
Versus the actual
happenings. The happenings, yeah.
Yeah. It means you've actually sat with yourself around the content of your life. You've actually given yourself space and place to reflect on it and see what's there for you. You've coached yourself a bit or listened to yourself in that. And so that's really valuable to bring to your coaching clients.
I like to think I've reframed in my own way of coaching that I'm more of a journey companion than a results inspire or whatever. Like it's not about the result. It's about the journey, who I become in the journey, for them to not to have more of an experience of everything I have practiced, shifted, opened up, where when I get the result, and that result may change in that journey, right? Maybe I wanted this, and as I'm working through different aspects, I'm like, oh, that's not something I want anymore. So that's what I mean. I always tell people when they come to my first session, like onboarding, to not be, that we will have like a North Star, but it's not like, this is what's happening. I don't let the client hold on to it tightly, or that's not the conversation I want to create, nor do I create every exercise based on that. I think that there's way more like juices in the development of beingness, right? So I know how I build in my mind that we are going for something, but I hold it loosely. How do you approach people wanting results, but not like holding it tightly?
I refer to sailing.
Okay.
And then describe to them what I mean by that, if they know anything about it. That if I say I want to sail, I want to circumnavigate the earth, like I want to go around the world. There will be checkpoints along the way to make sure I'm on the path of circumnavigating around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be certain horns and pieces and parts that I'll need to go around in order to move through all those places. But the actual day-to-day, week-to-week, even month-to-month journey is a tacking according to the wind and current elements of what's present. So every morning and every day, I'm facing what's current and I'm meeting it. And then I'm using my sails and or my tools to meet the weather, to allow that to continue to move me forward. So it's like velocity made good is what they call it in sailing, right? So the velocity, the rate at which, the power in which, the moving forward, there are times where it's going to feel like we're going away from it. But that's because we're meeting where we are in it, the weather, the elements, the whatever it is. And we need to just stay with that, because at some point we're going to attack and we're going to come back, and then it's going to send us in and toward. And then we get to ask ourselves, are we continuing to move toward and with the direction that we need to go? Are we still on track to circumnavigate the earth and the world? Yeah, we are. Does it feel a little bit like we're going back and forth and tacking and moving? And sometimes we sit still for a day or two or a week, and it's super frustrating. Sailing knows that. Anyone who's spent any time out in the various oceans. So I use that more as kind of a metaphorical, example or a literal example. And there's a lot of pieces there that I can use as metaphor or example of what the coaching relationship is like with them, right? Because it's a combination and a coming together of the boat, which is the actual mechanism, the sailor, which is them, right? They plotted the course. They use the maps.
But then there's life.
And then there's life and elements and weather, and I'm with them, right? And we're discussing that as we go.
Yeah.
Like, are you checking, or is there safety? Are you strapping yourself in if we know weather's coming? Are you doing the things you need to do? Are you taking care of your mental, emotional health, physical health along the way? Because this is a challenging process and endeavor.
Yeah.
All the stuff.
For sure.
I think that metaphorical example, whether they've sailed or not, allows them to have a better sense of, oh, yeah. And we know some points along the way that we're checking in on, because when we reach those points, we know we're still on track. We're still moving towards those. It may take longer. It may go faster, depending on what we meet along the way. May do this leg of it way faster than we thought we would. And this leg may take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But as long as, and at some point, we always know, like, can always pull into the harbor and grab some provisions, get some new maps, fix some things up, do some maintenance, and then get back out there. However that looks along the way.
What do you think is the main difference about coaching high performers than maybe someone who's looking to move, that has more judgment in their creation, or if they've created enough?
Can you say that differently? I'm not sure I know what I'm looking at or comparing. High performers versus someone who's judgmental in their creation?
Judgmental of themselves. Like, I haven't created enough. Like, high performers have created.
You mean just in general in coaching?
In general in coaching.
So those who are confident and competent in their performance and able to create results versus those who maybe aren't as confident or competent in their ability to create results?
Correct.
And is there a difference in coaching?
No. Not a difference in coaching. I don't think there's a difference in coaching.
Difference in the people?
I think that
other than what you're describing?
I think that this is more a question to, I don't know if I want to say squash interpretations about what coaching is and isn't, or inform a little more of what coaching is and isn't, because I know I've coached high performers and I've coached people that are still trying to get somewhere, and high performers, at least a lot of where I've not coached, but like the perception outside is like, why would I go with a coach? Coaching is to get results and to get money and to get success and to get.
Yeah, it's great. So I'll go back to the two axes that I use, right? And if I go vertical fulfillment, it's also quality. I tend to kind of associate, not completely, but associate quality of life. With horizontal success is quantity.
Yeah.
How to quantify it. So there's the qualitative and the quantitative.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I find is that we want both and. So if it's a high performer, great. So you've got that vertical, you've got that horizontal, you're doing it, great. But in order for me to be coaching them, we're working both of the axes.
Right.
And if that's not what they're interested in, that's okay. I'm just not the coach for them. I'm clear about that.
Yeah.
So if they just want to keep running that horizontal and they're not interested in more of the quality or qualitative, that's okay.
That's what that was.
Somebody else would be a better coach for them.
Totally.
Right? And then if somebody just doesn't necessarily have a lot of confidence, and one of the things I say often about confidence is it's a byproduct of competence. Building competence in areas tends to generate the byproduct of confidence. Sometimes we think it's the other way. We got to get confident in order to be competent. And that's actually not how the developmental model works. I got to practice and become competent in certain things. Then confidence can grow in parallel with that. And so we're still working both axes. Maybe we're just working both of them simultaneously because they're building competence in both. And therefore, over time, they'll build some confidence. And now we can start to see more increased performance in both. Performance meaning performance in creating qualitative, vertical, and quantitative results. Right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesomeness. We can end this with, what would you say I need to take care of as a mentor, or what would you offer me? Because it's intense.
Qualitative, right? Even though you can recognize and say that as a coach and what you want to pass on to other coaches is the importance of developing my words, my model, qualitative and quantitative, because you were more of a performative coach maybe at one point and a performative individual.
Human being, yeah.
Yeah, the performance and quantitative and what you could do, create, and therefore have was maybe more of your center of gravity. But you also knew qualitative was super important in way of being and quality of life and quality of relationships and how you felt, right? I would say for you, it's more the qualitative, right? And one of the things that I recognize, less content allows for deepening context. If I'm attempting to stay on top of delivering and managing all of the content, then there's less time and space for context to deepen. Context can't deepen if
it's full of content.
touching content, right? There's just no time for it to marinate because it's literally the steak's going from out of the package into the marinade, onto the fire, out of the package, into the marinade, onto the fire. Sometimes it skips the marinade because it's not efficient.
Yeah.
Right? So longer marinating, longer so it can deepen in. It kind of gets into the tissue of, mind, heart, people, individuals, yourself. Because why you're doing it and and it being alive in you needs to live when you're not doing it.
The coaching in general.
Mentoring, coaching.
Yeah.
It's got to be alive in you when you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So if it's only really alive in you when you're doing it.
No. I guess I have my moments. Yeah.
Like when you're walking your dog, are you filled deeply with the spirit of why and the energy of how deeply moved and touched and grateful you are that you have this opportunity to mentor or to guide or to coach or to serve or whatever?
Yes, all that, yes. But I think where I get into is when there's a lot of people, right?
It's content.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of projects, a lot of doing, a lot of get done. Versus space, deepening, exploring, nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to get to.
I'm like listening to you and there's this thing that comes up where I'm like, if I model that, I know that you're not saying model it. This is my interpretation, but like if I were to step back a little from everything and they're starting off, like, is that something good to model? That's my ego. Like, I was so hungry, like my whole beginning. I was like so hungry. I wanted to be everywhere.
Yeah, but you're mentoring from what you wanted.
Yeah,
versus
I know.
mentoring from what your current cohort.
Yeah.
And hunger doesn't mean you always feed it.
Yeah. I miss that time though. I miss that time when I had that much energy. Well, and I wanted to learn it all.
But I think that's part of what I'm asking is, do you feel that energy?
Yeah.
When you're not cranking on needing to, show up or do or whatever. Whenever I'm watching, like if I mentor mentors, which is a whole different kind of thing, I watch how quickly they grab to move it.
Or they don't grab at all.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like I either don't care or care too much. Like where is that middle? I'm not saying I've seen.
But that's the finesse.
Yeah.
Of mastering mentorship.
Yeah.
That is the finesse. Is not being extreme. Being in the gray, being in the iterative, being in the modulation, being in the sailing in between. Because ultimately, what do you want your mentees to, like, what are your top two things that are most important that they leave your mentorship and they have what in them and are able to, they feel competent and confident in?
I think a lot about Ale. I've told you about Ale because she's a coach now. Like she's actually someone that I trust with any of my clients. And that's my goal for all of them. And I think if I look at her, she can handle by now pretty much any human being in front of her. Like
handle them how?
Not handle them, but like handle, like not handle them, but like.
Handle them how?
No, handle like herself and everything. She didn't used to be.
But when you say that, what do you mean?
I mean that I trust her with anyone.
Trust her to what?
Coach.
In what way?
She knows the pillars. It's not personal. It's not about who's in front or like their back. Like she just stands by the pillars of what coaching is.
She's a contextual coach.
Yes, she's a contextual
And does
coach.
she coach the client?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you've seen the diagram that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I always am looking to mentor them in the triangle of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And most important is they know what they know about coaching and how to do the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to build rapport. But the very most important thing is, do they coach the client's relationship with coaching?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning the client becomes the best coach to themselves ever.
Like personal accountability.
The very best coach. And not just personal accountability, compassion, deep listening, not taking it personally, even within myself. All the things that you had just identified will stick to their values, will stand in their principles, will stand in that no matter what they're faced with. Like, do they become their own
coach
inside themselves?
Yeah.
I become irrelevant and unnecessary as a mentor, as a coach, as any of that.
Yeah.
For me, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. When you become irrelevant.
Totally.
Yeah. I like that.
Totally.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
That's
so for
easy
you,
to see.
perhaps it's that you're always moving toward increasing your irrelevance.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is them onboarding themselves and seeing
like
themselves as their own coach and mentor that they can turn to inside themselves.
Yes. I love that. I do see that with like, I hadn't framed it that way or worded it that way, but if I look at Ale, I know that's what I mean. She can handle anything. Like it's very rare now that she has to look or call me or that's what I mean. Like just trust that she's going to handle it and I'll get the report at the end of the week, but it's not like she needs to ask me anything. Like she feels that inner trust in herself and she creates amazing results. Like I always love how clients want me and then I say, you're going to go with Ale, because right now I can't do it. And some of them say yes, some of them say no, but the ones that say yes, they're like, and then they're like, never want to go back, right? Like they love her and they really create value in their lives. So that's what I would want. I don't think all of the coaches I'm mentoring would work with me, which isn't the goal at all. But I think the goal would be that, like that they feel not just confident, but purposeful and that their clients truly feel value. But I also see what you mean with I see big value in becoming irrelevant, like all of us. I do believe that coaching isn't like therapy in that way.
It's not. That's why I fire myself.
Yeah, I fire myself all the time. I give it like I fire myself all the time. And I always tell them that. And I know it's not a telling thing. They must experience it at some point, but that's what I love.
Well, and I think what's so funny is that coaching is one of those relationships that's a little funny about that, because coaching is one of those relationships that when it's going really, really, really well, you say goodbye.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Totally. But isn't it really, really, really well when the client is coaching themselves? Like that is really, really, really well. Not the result. But like this
Hang on,
coach.
though. It is the result.
Well, the inner result.
It is, and the external.
Mm-hmm.
So don't make the external wrong, because sometimes we can get to that too. We make the previous wrong because we're like, it's really not about that. It is about that.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world of tangible, measurable, that is. Mm-hmm. We do want competent and confidence there.
But if you have them get that and they don't have the inner, then that's not either.
It's true. Uh-huh. And so it's both.
Yeah.
And that they know how to create both consistently and over time. And they also know it's generated from inside and then it manifests outside.
I have a few questions, but you can answer them in a phrase. It's from them. It's from my mentees.
Okie dokie.
I'm going to try and ask the ones that I know are not as complicated. Because some of them are so long. Okay, so what would be something that's fundamental for someone who's starting their journey as a coach?
Fundamental.
Like, what is it? Like a original brick?
Fundamental.
I know what comes to
original
my
brick.
mind.
What's yours?
Personal responsibility. I will always.
That's not a brick though. What's that? How does that show up in a brick?
I don't know.
Like it's a value, but what's a fundamental for starting out as a coach? Fundamental for me starting out as a coach is to know the difference between context versus content, skills to be developed, tools to be wielded and used, right? To generate outcomes. Like you kind of want to know what's in your tool bag, but more importantly, you want to be very clear about who you are using those tools. And then at some point, you really want to be clear about how you hand those tools to your client and then teach your client how to, or let your client learn how to use them. But for me, it is fundamental.
I just know a lot of coaches that aren't responsible. That's why I think.
But they think they are?
No.
Oh.
I think that there's certain coaching branches, theories that aren't very based on personal responsibility.
It's also a big thing for you. It's like fundamental period for you.
Yeah. I mean, if you're being coached in my...
and I just step back from personal responsibility would be an example of context.
Right. Totally.
And then ways that you could translate that to content.
Yeah.
Would be, responsibility versus victim. These different kind of conversations. When we're in a responsible conversation, it would sound like this. When we're in a victim conversation, it would sound like this.
Yeah.
And then asking your client to recognize those and then to be able to identify them quickly within themselves. Is that more of a responsible conversation or is that more of a victim conversation in this moment?
Yeah.
Would be a valuable thing to instill in the coaching relationship.
Ownership and accountability.
And what that actually means. That's the key for me. Like we speak about those terms, but what does that actually mean? In way of being, and what does that actually mean in how it actually is then practiced in a coaching relationship, and how do I know when my client is being accountable and or responsible and in ownership? Totally. What do I see? Totally. What am I listening? What am I seeing demonstrated?
Yeah, because sometimes it could even look like it is, and it's
they can wield the language like lingo like fabulously because they're articulate, but they're not living it.
Totally. Yeah. Or even,
what am I looking for as a coach to know? Is that actually being integrated, practiced, and lived?
Totally.
Yeah.
A ver. What tools do you use as a coach when your own life is like a hurricane you are walking through?
What tools do I use as a coach?
Yeah. In your own life. For
in my
yourself.
own life.
When your life feels like a hurricane you're crossing through.
Great. Self-regulation. All the different self-regulations, how to regulate my system. Nature. I spend time in nature. I go and I move my body so that I know how to move energy through my body. Right? So it may feel like a hurricane in the moment, or it may feel like a hurricane during the day, but I know how to connect to that, move that through me, regulate my system so that when I get on the call or I enter into the session, okay, I have developed the ability to transition. And I think transitions make it or break it for people in general. And so I develop the skill and tool in transition. So I move that energy through me. I regulate my system. I get focused. I enter into the session. That transition is important. I do the session. As soon as I come out of that session, I go do the same thing. I'm going to go move the energy. I'm going to go regulate my system. And then I move into the next session. So it's before and after. Always, it's self-regulation and moving the energy through my system. Right?
Awesome. Tu tío. Last one. What would Krista now tell Krista starting as a coach?
What would Krista now
tell Krista starting out as a coach?
slow down,
Mm-hmm.
be patient, and genuinely care about what they're saying. Not trying to figure out what they're saying so that you can get to how you're going to help them. Slow down. Like, slow down. And you have incredible raw talent. And if you practice and you hone it, you'll have a very long career in this. But you got to slow down. You got to be patient. You got to really genuinely care about what they're saying. Because most of your clients will not move at your pace. Like, my mind moves
fast. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much.
What's
Slow down, be patient, and genuinely care about what your client is saying. Like, genuinely care about it. Instead of listening, thinking that you know what they're saying so that you can figure out how to help them. Like, really stay present and care about what they're saying. And I think the piece there too is trust them. Trust them. Especially when they don't trust themselves, especially when there's question or doubt or worry or all of that. Like, trust them, to really trust that they genuinely are looking to have their own best interest at heart and how to support that. But yeah, my mind moves really, really fast, and that rarely will I find a client that moves in the coaching world. And in this process, will I find a client that moves as quickly as I do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say, probably, among other things. But yeah.
Thank you.
You have raw talent.
Yeah.
And if you practice and stay focused, you can have a long career in this.
And
you
we have
genuinely care about people.
I feel like it's going to be 18 years that I graduated from my own. 18 years.
Is that crazy to you?
So crazy to me.
Do you know when I say I had a training career for 30 years?
Yeah, I know.
It's like.
But I'm almost going to be like half my life.
Okay, this is what I love about you. You're like, yeah, got it, 30 years. But do you know, for me, 18 is like 60.
I know.
It's like half your life.
It's half my life. In this work, it's crazy.
Who let you in the ring half of your life ago?
Who let me in the ring?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
How old were you?
22.
Yeah, I was 23. What were they thinking? Ay.
Awesome.
No.
I think it's awesome.
What about it?
My life would have been disastrous. Like, and it's not the coaching piece, it's the work.
You don't think it would have been you don't think you would have gone a different direction? That could have been just as equally as fabulous?
I don't know. I really do believe that this work brought me to a different understanding of life.
But you don't feel like you would have found it. This feels unique.
No.
In that way?
I feel that I was very not going in the right path.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would have figured it out.
You're 22, not going in the right path. They're throwing you in there to lead people. I think it's just fascinating.
No, but they threw me out to lead people when I was like 26.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
You went into your process.
My process.
Got it. I was leading people at 23.
No. I was leading people at 26.
Okay. 3 years.
No, I know, but you know, to me it's crazy. Like,
it's crazy. I look at my girls. That's how old they are right now. I'm like, ay.
No, I look at 19-year-olds and I'm like, why would my mom ever let me go live on my own
in New York City?
Like, I'm like, I look like that?
Because we lived many lives before.
That's so crazy. I'm super proud, but I'm super like, I don't know if I'd let my kid do it.
I know. I look back on it and I'm just like, really?
Yeah. But it's awesome because it made me like really love that my mom did it. Like, it's also been
too.
like, wow, you were courageous. Like, that was ballsy.
Talk about trusting you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she didn't have a choice.
Yeah, she didn't really. But anyway, thank you so much. Yes, we're done.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. Love you so much.
Love you so much.
Always so grateful that you invite me in and include me in this and let me talk to you and be a part of your amazing community.
I love having you here. They know all about us. And I'm also happy to see your new phase, your new piece of your journey that comes filled with new adventures.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
Me
I'm
too.
also very excited to be a part of it, to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With that, are we saying goodbye?
Yes.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Gracias, comunidad linda, por estar aquí. Si crees que este episodio puede despertar, apoyar, inspirar, sostener a alguien de tu vida, no dudes en enviarlo. Te invito también a suscribirte al canal y a tocar la campanita para que te avisemos cuando haya un episodio nuevo. Gracias, linda comunidad. Y tengo un canal nuevo para ti. El canal de meditaciones está disponible en Spotify, Meditaciones by MartaRo. Hay meditaciones para intencionar tu día, para que empieces con todo, de distintas temáticas, para empoderarte, para centrarte, para darte paciencia. Ve y búscalo y arranquemos tus mañanas juntos. Te amo. Adiós.